This is the White Coat Investor Podcast, Milestones to Millionaire, celebrating stories of success along the journey to financial freedom. Here is your host, Dr. Jim Dahle.
This is Milestones to Millionaire Podcast number 33, the Millionaire Podiatrist. If you want to come on the Milestones podcast, you can apply at whitecoatinvestor.com/milestones. Whatever your financial accomplishment has been, maybe it's paying off debt, maybe it's getting public service loan forgiveness, maybe it's hitting a net worth figure of getting back to broke or 100,000 or $1 million or becoming financially independent. Whatever you've accomplished, we want to celebrate it with you. So please come on the podcast. We'll share your story with others and use your experience to inspire them to do the same. It's story time, brought to you by locumstory.com. Today we'll be reading Docs in Shocks. Some docs are overworked. As work works, overworked workers weary. Some docs are overstocked. Stopped as pandemic tick-tocks keep docs off clocks. If docs are in shock as the pandemic clock tick-tocks, then locums is the token to unburn the burnt-out broken. So how many clock tick-tocks must talk until docs tick box and swaps to the spoken locum tenens token to unburn the burnt-out broken? Enough ticks have talked, the time is now, and locums is how. Locum tenens tends to trend as a godsend mend to burnt-out ends. For more locum tenens information, locumstory.com is your final destination. All right, we've got a special guest today, a podiatrist who has not only paid off some serious debt, but has also accumulated a significant net worth. Let's get him on the phone. All right, our guest today is Tyson. Tyson is a podiatrist. Welcome to the Milestones to Millionaire podcast.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here.
Now, you've done a whole bunch of different stuff, so we're going to try to celebrate it all together. First of all, you paid off some pretty serious debt here. You paid off your student loans. Tell us about that. How much you had, how long it took, how you did it.
So it was about $290,000, which is pretty average for when I was coming out. That took about 7 years. And it took so long for me because we also had an additional $600,000 of a business debt. And I think one thing that's cool about podiatry is that it's a perfect mixture of medical and kind of like a dental, where I was still able to buy into a practice at probably probably more than what I bargained for. I mean, I definitely learned a lot. But paying that all off, I ended up doing that all in about 8 years. So it ended up being like $800,000 to $900,000 in 8 years. So adding
That's
up
pretty
was
impressive. Now, a lot of podiatrists don't make that much money. What was your average household income over that 8 or 9 years?
So I was looking at the averages, and I actually signed my first year contract for $85,000. And the idea was I never wanted to do, hospital medicine. I wanted to be private from the beginning. And the guy was getting older and he was retiring. So I said, you know what, just whatever you pay me, that's fine. And I knew I was going to buy it at the end of the year. So I bought it. So 85 was the first year. And then it went to 200, 300. So after, it's been about 10 years I've been out. And the average after everything is about 541. So it's definitely higher than most podiatrists for sure.
Yeah, certainly a big part in your success story. I mean, maybe we should spend a little bit of time dwelling on that. That's pretty unusual for a podiatrist. It sounds like you ran a practice very well. Any tips for people wanting to run their podiatry practice as well as you have?
I mean, and I like to say my wife also helped in the way that she's very frugal. And I think you find a lot of people who do well, they're frugal, but then their wives are even more frugal. And that's definitely with my wife. And she helped me in the beginning of the practice, and every little bit went into it. And whatever was left over, that tiny bit, we ended up taking home and just barely squeaked by. But as far as the practice, I love to say that I'm awesome and I'm an amazing business guy, but really I got a lot of lucky. Is geographic arbitrage, which you talk about all the time. I did my residency down in Southern California, and I came up to Salem, Oregon, which isn't the metropolis that people love to talk about. But for me, it's been a great area to practice, a lot of great pathology. Didn't have quite the competition as other places. And I was really able to establish myself well here. Bought a practice that was probably one of the better practices, at least in the state. And from there, I just kind of expanded from that. Also, I have to say too, I also joined a surgery center, part owner with a great orthopedic group that's also really well established here too. So a lot of things started happening. It's weird. You go in, you leave residency and you're like, kind of like, I'll take what I take, and you don't quite know what you're getting into. And especially for me, I took it, had no idea what I was doing with the business. And then after a couple of years, you start getting better and you know what works and what doesn't, and you get your flow. But it was rough. I mean, one of the questions I've been asked is like, was it what you thought it was? And yeah, it was rough. Like it was rough in the very beginning. There was a lot of tears. It was tough. But and you look back now and you're like, wait, you kind of have this like selective amnesia on what happened. But yeah, it was rough. I mean, there was a time I had a lease for my building, and I said he was wanting way too much. I'm going to just make my own building. So I put down the money to make the building, and of course they always want more and more. And I'm here sitting on my rounds trying to get to go see these diabetic patients I'm seeing at the hospital, and my wife is saying, "Is that you gotta? How much are they taking from you? Like, we don't have as much." And we were down to like our last $1,000 of our personal and like $10,000 business, which was gone so fast. And so you haven't. She's like crying. What are you doing? What are you doing? And you just got to say, hey, I know my numbers. Every day I wake up and I know what these numbers are, and I know that the business can make it. And we did. And I think we've established a pretty good business out here. So
yeah, I think a lot of people that haven't owned businesses don't maybe understand how much hard work and how much risk goes into it a lot of the time, and they just see the payoff down the road, and they don't realize that there was some sacrifice made on the way there. I think there's something to learn about your geography as well, right? Salem is not the boondocks by any means. A lot of people, they hear geographic arbitrage and they assume they got to live in some farm town in the middle of Iowa, and that's just not the case. You just basically got to get out of Portland. You got to get out of San Francisco. And all of a sudden, there's not that many docks around. The cost of living goes way down. Maybe the taxes go down a bit. And there's lots of opportunity there. So I think that was probably a really good selection for you, and has obviously helped as well. So what's your net worth at this point?
So the net worth, and thank you for allowing me to calculate it. It was actually really fun doing it. So I have a little over $1 million. And it's $1,058,000. That's mixed between a 401k. You're not going to like it, but a taxable account, cash.
I don't have a problem with a taxable account. That's my biggest account. So I got no problem with that.
What was crazy? Okay, I'll tell you. I started during the COVID, and I kind of put stuff as just kind of placing it there. And then all of a sudden you can imagine, as you throw money into a taxable account for COVID, you can't stop it. So I have the cash investments. I also have another, I have a target date fund as well that I have. And so all that kind of cash goes up to about a little over $1 million. And then when I calculated, I also have some real estate, and I was surprised with how quickly the real estate started increasing your net worth as well. I have 973 in real estate. So my net worth, long answer, my net worth is 1.9.
Did you include the practice
is also
too?
Big.
You include the value of the practice?
No, I don't. I didn't include that.
That's probably significant as well. I don't know, another $500,000 or $1 million at least,
up
right?
There. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's doing well. But yeah, and that the real estate's interesting. I have a building, but the building we just got, and there's not as much. The real estate out here has been really good to us. I bought pretty low in 2011, and it's just really increased, and blessings. It's been nice that way.
Yeah. So where are you at right now with debt? I mean, you had a practice loan, you had pretty significant student loans, presumably a mortgage. You still carrying any of that, or you got it all paid off, or where you at?
I am. I paid off everything except the real estate, which is something big. I've kind of leveraging the real estate. My goal is in 15 years, everything's paid off. And with that, the next thing, I just slowly starting to hit the real estate right now, and going to pay off the house. I have about 200 in the house, and it's worth about 650. So there's, I have that, and then I have other real estates like the building and a couple other things. But that total is about, now it's going to sound like a lot, it's $1 million, but it's paying, it's a different kind of debt. Like that student loan debt, when I paid it off, it's not just like an albatross around your neck. It's like this albatross with a 50-pound lead weight on it. It's so heavy, and you can't, I know how you feel about leveraging, but you can't leverage student loans like you can real estate. And it's interesting. I'm just actually right now, I'm going through this 1031 exchange of a property I had, and it increased to $170,000 in 1 year. I mean, that's crazy. And so I enjoy the real estate. But when you have stuff like that, that really adds up to your net worth quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting to think you made as much on one property in 1 year. That's twice as much as you made your first year out practicing, isn't it? Yeah,
It's
pretty
crazy.
wild.
It's crazy to see how much you come. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for someone that is just like you were, a decade ago? Coming out, they're not sure what to do with their career. They've got this big fat student loan. They want to be like you a decade from now. They want to be worth $3 million and have all their student loans paid off and all that. What advice do you have for that person?
It was really hard. I think comparison is so hard. You have Instagram and you see all these things, and all my friends, I had an ER doc, I had a family practice doc, I have a bunch of guys, and these guys come out and they get a brand new Lexus, and you're like, and you just have to suppress that. And that my goals are a different goal. And a lot of people talk about mindset, but it really is like, once you have that debt out of it and you can see, I would say don't compare. That's the big thing. And enjoy the money that you have. I mean, we make a lot. Obviously, I make more, but I make good amount. But enjoy the money that you have. Little day trips and little camping trips. I mean, those are super fun. And especially when the kids, I made $85,000, but then the kids were young and we had a blast, and we would still go skiing and surfing and do what I love to do. And we found time. And that's what I think was a big part, is don't compare and find time to enjoy what you have.
Awesome.
I just recently read this book. I read this book, Die With Zero, and it inspired me to kind of enjoy what you have while it's here.
Yeah, there's not going to be any trailer hitch on your hearse, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Scott, congratulations on your success. I think people will find your story very inspiring. And thank you so much for coming on the Milestones podcast.
And thank you so much for all you've done. You've inspired me, and I'm sure you've inspired millions of others. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I love that story. There's so many good lessons there. The sacrifices and risk of being a business owner, the fact that owning can really get your income a lot higher than when you're just an employee. The focus on debt that he had, getting rid of those student loans, and yet a moderate attitude toward it, and the benefits of leverage when, investing down the road. So I think there's a lot of great lessons learned there. But what I loved was actually after we stopped recording, we were talking about how the fact that he's walking into a patient's room in a couple of minutes and just loves his practice, and he loves life, and everything's going great. And, it's just wonderful when you get a handle on your money. All the rest of your life seems to go just a little bit better. So it's awesome to get him on the podcast and hear that sort of success story. For doctors, the story has changed. Visit locumstory.com for unbiased information about locum tenens and see if it should be your next chapter. And remember, locum tenens tends to trend as a godsend men to burnt out ends. If you would like to come on the White Coat Investor Milestones to Millionaire podcast, you can apply whitecoatinvestor.com/milestones. And we'll celebrate whatever your accomplishment is and use it to inspire others. In the meantime, keep your head up, your shoulders back. You can do this and we can help. We'll see you next time on the Milestones podcast.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dahle, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.